To Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As my previous colleague just mentioned, obviously, this issue is very bipartisan. There's a lot of bipartisan pieces of legislation that are moving through Congress, one being the SHIP Act that I'm doing with Congressman Lawler. Additionally, the letter that we sent to President Biden, myself, and Congresswoman Nancy Mace, asking them to deny a visa for the Iranian president to come to the UN. I do not believe the Iranian president should have the League of Nations at his disposal at the United Nations. By the way, that happened once before under President Trump and happened once before under President Obama, where we've denied visas to Iranian leadership. So I think we need to be doing that as well. On the latest deal, let me give a slightly different perspective. So when I was in the state legislature, I represented the district where Robert Levinson lived. And as congressman, I represent the district where Robert Levinson lived. And so he missed birthdays, he missed weddings, he missed grandchildren, and then he never came home because he died. And this was all done by the Iranian regime. And so I think we all support trying to bring Americans home. There's no doubt about that. The disagreement is what means are you willing to do that by, right? And so, look, I am extremely uncomfortable with giving the Iranian regime any dollars. But the problem is, and I don't know that there's a right answer for this, which is why I'm not necessarily going to ask it. The problem is that when the regime you're dealing with won't make a deal without that, right? Do you tell those American families that we can't bring your family home because we're not willing to give the Iranian regime any money? And that becomes the tough part, right? And so, yeah, I don't want the Iranian regime to get any dollars because we all know more than likely what will happen with that money. But at the same time, we have to figure out how to make families whole, American families whole when the Iranians take them. On the Abraham Accords, I think we've made tremendous progress. I want Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. I want Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, not just from the Iranian perspective, not just from the Israeli perspective, but from the China perspective. If we don't bring Saudi Arabia in, then they're going to go to China. And then you have the China, Iran, Saudi Arabia problem. And so I think, to me, this is not just an Israel-Abraham Accords issue. This is a world peace from fighting against a destabilizing force, an Iran issue. And, I know there are lots of talks going on. Saudi Arabia wants maybe an Article 5-like protection. Look, I think we should give that to them. If that's what would get them away from China, away from Iran, and into the Abraham Accords, I think that could really change the perspective. On direct diplomacy, I'm all for diplomacy at all times. We're always talking. There's diplomacy going on right now with Russia, with China. We're always talking. We should be doing the same thing with Iran. But we have to have a credible military threat. That's why diplomacy will work here. It will not work if we do not have a credible military threat. And by the way, speaking about consistency, there's no doubt that there's been inconsistency on the American policy here over the last several administrations, and that has harmed us. But I'm not really convinced I know what the policy is today on the military threat. And so I support the chairman on the resolution, that a sense of Congress saying that it's unacceptable for Iran to get a nuclear weapon. We all say that it's unacceptable, but what are we willing to do about that, right? And that's where I think America needs to speak with one voice. Listen, there's no doubt that we've seen in the past these things work. Stuck next, that the virus, that worked, right? Previous sort of, whether it's cyber or military interventions, have worked. We all know right now the only reason why the centrifuges aren't going up is not because of anything we're doing. It's because the Iranians are not doing it, right? And they could do it at any moment. It's not like we have some lever that would stop them. They could do it at any moment. And most likely, we'll find out after the fact because they're so close. So it wouldn't be we could do a preemptive military strike to stop it. It would be post. We would find out that they've hit the threshold, and then it would be what are we willing to do? And so, listen, I think maybe more joint military exercises in the Middle East. I think showing maybe the Iranian regime, the military capabilities we have in the Middle East by doing maybe some weapons tests out there. They need to understand what we're willing to do, and then we do the diplomacy. Then we sit down with them, and we try to work this out. And so, listen, this is a bipartisan issue. I do think we should continue to say we stand with the Iranian people. We should do everything we can and sit down with our allies, as you pointed out, to try to build a coalition. The same coalition we built with Ukraine, we should be building a similar coalition with Iran. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I yield back.